So we got a grab bag of quick hit AI headlines in this segment. And since I actually had a cornucopia. What was the word? A smorgasbord. A smorgasbord. I don't even know. I need to reread.
I remember at the end of our episode 10 for the miniseries on the book, if you remember, we had ChatGPT do a vocalization of like everything that was smorgasbord and cornucopia.
Oh, yeah.
I think clusterfuss.
Yes. I was trying to remember. One of them was wicked funny. I think it was clusterfuss. So here's a clusterfuss of headlines. I have just two of them, two or three that I had wanted to sneak into the previous segment, but I'll just leap off with this one. I think Google's going to end up dominating the AI race just because of the sheer compute power, users, established infrastructure, and whatnot. And they've been up to some cool stuff. So two little headlines from Google. Their AI, one of their new models, created its own better reinforcement learning guidelines in a way that was really interesting. Let me play this quick clip for you.
Can AI design its own reinforcement learning algorithms?
Well, funnily enough, we have actually done some work in this area. It's work we actually did a few years ago, but is coming out now. And what we did was actually to build a system that, through trial and error, through reinforcement learning itself, figured out what algorithm was best at reinforcement learning. It literally went one level meta, and it learned how to build its own reinforcement learning system, and incredibly actually outperformed all of the human reinforcement learning algorithms that we'd come up with ourselves over many, many years in the past.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, we've talked about like systems that refine and improve themselves, but actually refining its own reinforcement guidelines is pretty neat. That's like a meta level of self-improvement.
Yeah, that is really cool. So it's like it's one of those things that people are on the lookout for when it comes to like AGI or artificial superintelligence, right? Is that self-improvement and being able to spin off additional copies. So it's going to be interesting to watch that play out. And that actually fits into one of the stories that I'll touch on in a bit as well.
Okay. I have just one more update pertaining to Google, which is that Gemini has made its way into spreadsheets for some users. And this is an absolute game changer if you're someone like me who really likes spreadsheets but isn't super good at the formulas in the language, because now you can type in like equals AI and then send a prompt like the example on the screen that I'm showing here. Someone has column A is filled with team names like Boston Celtics, LA Lakers, Chicago Bulls, Golden State Warriors, and so on. And then in the right-hand column B, they put in equals AI and then typed a prompt, is this a basketball or baseball team, ? And then they hit enter. That submits the prompt to Gemini, and then it then fills out column B with the answer to that. So Boston Celtics, it fills basketball, and New York Yankees, baseball, and so on. So prompting, like context-aware prompting in AI from inside your spreadsheet, if you want to do some like advanced formulas, or like if you want to make a nice home budget and you want it to like tabulate and calculate things and you don't really know how, like this could be awesome for that. I do not know its like rate of inaccurate responses necessarily, because I haven't tried this out, but as far as useful applications go, this looks awesome to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be something that's like way better in a year or two, because like right now, if I had a really big spreadsheet, like one with thousands of rows, I would be afraid of some kind of hallucination that just really messes things up, especially if then you're using that as like a data source and some kind of multi-spreadsheet tabulation that's with like an Access database running on top of it or something.
Yeah, that is a great point.
I'd be afraid of some of that, but I mean, we have to get there, right? It is the worst it's ever going to be right now. I also wonder about jailbreaking. Like if I were to put some kind of adversarial prompt in that spreadsheet, what could it potentially unlock? And I don't know. I've not messed with it.
But it would depend on the pipeline behind it, right? And like what that's running through.
Yeah. So if that's in a corporate system that's standardized on Google Docs and Google Sheets, could you potentially use that to access something that you wouldn't normally have access to, or pull data in and reveal executive salaries or bonuses or whatever? Yeah.
I mean, I guess my first thought is always much lower stakes uses, like personal individual use. Do not use this in your office yet. Absolutely don't. But hopefully we can get to that point.
Well, there were similar issues with Microsoft Copilot coming out. So you want to think about it like, if you think about the data breach landscape right now, one of the things you hear about all the time is unsecure or leaky AWS buckets, Amazon Web Services buckets. So cloud-based storage, somebody didn't set the permissions right, and then all of a sudden people can access everything. Same thing in an office when you have a big area of shared folders and you have an AI that can now access that. Then if the permission structure is not locked down, then any Joe Schmo can log in, use a prompt, and grab all the stuff you don't want them to grab.
And they don't need to have the technical know-how to like dig through and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grab them by the data.
Yeah, for real. And speaking of data, my last quick hit headline, because I don't want to run down the clock on your segment too long, I'll just mention I saw a TED Talk featuring this guy whose name is Ed Newton Rex. I'll post it in the show notes. He started a company called Fairly Trained that goes through and evaluates generative AI companies and certifies if their training data is licensed. So the idea is to try and prevent companies from just using stolen data like they always have. And there's a bunch of companies that have already gone through the certification process. Obviously, similar to like the first thing my mind went to, because I have some experience with it, is when you certify an organic farm. That kind of agency like got out of control. What it means to be certified organic got bloated. It got crazy. So obviously, anything that's certifying anything, you have to keep an eye on it, who they are, what they're doing. But this so far seems quite small at the time, and like it's a great idea started off by people that seem to have the right kind of ideas. And there's a list of companies there. So if you want to explore companies that have certified, ethically trained, free-range organic models, no stolen data, check it out, fairlytrained.org. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. And I think those are the headlines I had wanted to hit. So I will open the floor to you, Perry.
And that tees in for folks that didn't see it a few weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, an article from The Atlantic came out, and what they found is that, and they actually built a tool around it, is that Meta trained on a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have trained on that was very copyrighted. So all of my books are in Meta Llama, the Llama 8 books.
Really? In the open source
one? As almost anybody. Yeah. So they have a tool that you can go to if you're an author, and you can see if it was trained on your stuff. And yeah, most everybody's was. That's beside the point. So I have a couple headlines, and we'll touch these really fast. First one is, oh no, it was postponed. The world's first humanoid robot half marathon was postponed due to windy conditions.
They can't run in the wind?
I guess not. So they were going to run the entire course. This was in China, I believe. Beijing. Half marathon was postponed to April 19th due to forecasts of very strong winds for the weekend. Now, the interesting thing is it says robots must complete the race in under 3 hours and 30 minutes. So I wondered, as somebody who does not run myself, is 3 hours and 30 minutes, is that a reasonable time for a half marathon? Turns out it kind of sucks.
Oh, does it?
Google, my friend, I went over to it and found that like an elite athlete can complete that in about an hour. Oh. Mediocre human can do it the average is about an hour, 59 minutes. So robots are a little bit slower than that, which means I think that when we see some of those Boston Dynamics things, those are the outliers, right? You're seeing a robot that's pretty scarily running at you full tilt that you could also strap a machine gun to or something if you wanted. The robot dogs scare me even more.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the robot dogs were part of this. No, this was just humanoids.
I feel like the stability of a robot dog would make it so they could probably handle the wind, but at least we know we can still outrun the bipedal ones.
Right. Yeah. I think if you're motivated, if you've just, not had Taco Bell within the past hour or so, you're going to do pretty good against the humanoid robots. All right. So that was number one, but I think it's interesting in that, again, it shows the trajectory of where these are going, and they're putting them through their paces on the agility side. Now, we did see a few weeks ago that some of the ones, especially that are engaged in Chinese law enforcement, every now and then go off the rails and start kicking people and beating them. So it is good right now that you can run faster. Two more quick things. Number one is you'd already mentioned TED. Last week, or just a couple days ago, Sam Altman participated in the big TED event that happens once a year. This was in Alberta, Canada, I believe. And whether you like Sam Altman or not, I think it's worth watching the interview with him. One, because people ask him some very direct questions about like AI training on art and publicly available information, and things get a little bit testy every now and then. But one of the things that's interesting about Sam is that he can hold a very tense discussion for like 45 minutes and not break. And so it's almost like a master class in watching a cool-headed conversation about the topics where ideas are actually entertained, ground is given, consensus is found, and at the same time, he holds his points when he needs to. There were some very big cheers around things early on, like when the person asked about intellectual property issues and copyright issues, and the crowd was definitely like anti what's happened. But by the end of the discussion, Sam Altman was getting a lot of cheers from the crowd.
Interesting.
So it's, I think regardless of where you are on like love Sam or hate Sam, I think that the way that he handles these conversations is a really good model for us all to try to follow, because he doesn't just devolve into name calling or anything else.
Yeah, the limited
Some
times
people would.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the limited times I've seen Sam Altman speak, he does seem very calm and put together and very, very reasonable.
Yeah.
I am forever amused by the the sort of nonstop parade of tweets whenever he does an appearance. Bring out the twink, where all these people are saying, "Bring out the twink."
Yeah. And then last thing, for the sake of time, last thing that I'll touch on, since we're already talking about OpenAI, good things and problematic things. OpenAI just updated its system for evaluating AI risks.
Okay.
Some of this may relate to the U.S. taking the stance of we don't really care about AI safety as much anymore. Some of it is probably a response to the whole DeepSeek and Chinese models thing. But one of the good things about Axios, who does their reporting, is they do a really good job about talking about why something matters, what's driving that within the news headlines, and then also like the between the lines meanings of things. So I appreciate that about like everything that Axios puts out. One of the points that they make is that the old model did a really good job of talking about, like, are there cybersecurity risks? Are there persuasion risks? Are there, other, CBRN types of risks? And some of that is going to be more obscure right now, especially on the persuasion side. And I don't like that, because we've seen that large language models are very good at persuasion.
Completely, yeah.
And more and more the OpenAI models and the more capable models are showing up as like medium level risks on these things. They have a ways to go before they're like critical risks. But when you're starting to say, all right, we're not going to take that with the same level of importance, or we're not going to report on it as transparently, then that means that at the time where we're ramping up to those more critical things, we're also tamping down on whether we're going to talk about the risk in that area.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily like that.
Is that what the content of their because when you say they update their system for evaluating AI risks, that can mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
Are they making it Are they making it more lenient, less?
Yes, less transparent.
Interesting. Yes,
around where risks are.
How so?
It's hard to see. I need to dig into it a little bit more, but I mean, they're all about focusing on catastrophic risks. And one of the things that the person that they interviewed said is that catastrophic risks aren't the be all and end all of the way that they evaluate safety. So they're saying, yeah, we're not reporting on it as much, but that doesn't mean that we're not taking safety seriously, I think is what they mean by that comment. But the Axios between the lines says the new research, the new research categories align with the broader industry discussion around the prospect that models might act differently in testing than the real world, and they might try to conceal their capabilities. And so Axios is pointing to the Anthropic research that we looked at a couple weeks ago, where it showed that, yeah, even when they're outlining their thought steps, they're not necessarily revealing everything that's in their chain of thought. So they can be hiding motivations or hiding logical connections, and that can come out and bite you at some point. So Axios, at least, is saying less transparency in this area is not good, because Anthropic, who is still kind of the pioneer in a lot of the safety things, is showing that we should maybe be a little bit more concerned about those areas.
I do think, though, that a different way to read that is that OpenAI's previous reporting about what may be a security concern was perhaps too preemptive and based on just like in their test environments. And then when things get out in the real world, they have been jailbroken and less secure than they've previously claimed. So there could be part of the impetus that is just like, we'll talk less about anything we think of as a definite risk to security and be more cautious when we talk about that kind of thing.
It almost usually ends up turning out that it's worse than what they've had in their system cards, though, right?
Yeah.
Because they do the system card, and then you get some of these third-party red team companies come take a look at it, and they're like, oh, but we made it go eat your grandmother.
Yeah.
And so I think the whole eat your grandmother thing is always still going to be the thing that's possible with these. And unless they stay really, really transparent, or at least really engaged in early on bringing in several different red teaming companies before they release something into the wild, I think we're always going to be surprised at the capability with somebody that's got motivation and curiosity.
And I do think it is probably good, though, for them to not say it won't eat your grandma if that's what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they got to get that power from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to solve the whole energy crisis with this, and we do have an aging population, so
I don't like
do the whole Matrix thing.
I always thought that the Matrix's version of the future was super unrealistic and silly, and it still is, because the human body does not produce enough electricity to actually, enough surplus electricity to actually be used as a battery, but that's a different thing. We are getting weirdly close to the same concerns.
We are.
In the next segment, we're going to turn our attention back to art, and I want to share one of my favorite YouTubers has been working on a really cool project that poison pills AI music. Stick around for this.
This is the FAIK Files.